Okay, let's go live. How's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Panama City, Panama. And it feels weird for me to be doing a live in the daytime because I've been over on the other side of the world for so long, and I had to do my lives at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. That doing one in the morning is a little strange. And so I'm trying to get sort of recalibrated here, not just my sleep schedule, but everything else. And of course, haven't been home in 3 months, so we got a lot of stuff to do. Trying to just, you know, all the minutia of daily life that sort of builds up. And so we're in the city today. Unfortunately, I try to avoid Panama City as much as possible because it's just hot down here. We live up in the mountains where it's cool and nice. So when I get back there, I never want to leave. I just want to stay in my house and my yard and go for a run and stuff like that. But we got some shopping and stuff we have to do in the city today. So we are here, and I appreciate all of you being on with us. Now, I'm just looking to see here if we are actually live. So if you can hear me, put your where you're watching from in the chat box, please, and let me know where you're coming in from. I see somebody from Hawaii already there, uh, Brandenburg, Maryland, Florida. So yeah, I guess you can see me. Uh, it the if the internet's a little bad, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how great it's going to be at this house. But we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about. It's been a couple days. So over the weekend, the IDF struck military targets that belong to Houthi terrorists in the capital city of Sanaa in Yemen. And they were very major strikes. As a matter of fact, I've got some video of it here. Let's hope this doesn't get me uh, demonetized or anything. But this is some of the strikes look like there in Yemen. Uh, Absolutely massive, massive fireballs uh, and mushroom clouds rising over Sanaa. Sanaa is a city of over 3 million people. And one of the main things they hit was the um, power station and the main power station, which put most everybody out of power in Yemen. I mean, if you're a terrorist, you don't get to have nice things. And I've been saying for a long time that they're going to have to strike more than just like military targets. They're going to have to try to strike at the heart of the support network for the Houthis. And that looks like is what the IDF did. They sent more than 10 aircraft. They struck more than 50 targets. And I want to show you one of the targets that they struck, which is this palace here. This is the presidential palace in Sanaa. So that's what it looked like. That's the before, and then the after is right there. And that place is just up in flames. Unbelievable. As a matter of fact, if we go forward here a little bit, this right here, that's what's left of the presidential palace, I believe, right there. So uh, very, very strong strikes on the Houthis. Couldn't happen to a nicer group of people. Uh, they struck a military site in the area around the presidential palace. They struck the presidential palace. They struck two power plants, a storage site for fuel, and all of these things were used to support Houthi military activity and their terrorism, their strikes against Israel. Now, just earlier in the weekend, the Houthis fired a what is believed to be a, cluster munition at Israel. And what we know about that so far is a ballistic missile that they believe was equipped with a cluster warhead, which is designed to disperse multiple submunitions uh, on impact and even before. So there's little confusion I've seen in the press over this. A lot of them are reporting it as if it was a MIRV, a multiple independent reentry vehicle ballistic missile, which is basically a bunch of baby ballistic missiles on one large ballistic missile. And when it is on its terminal attack phase coming in to its targets, the baby ballistic missiles split off and will strike multiple locations at once. That is not a cluster munition. A cluster munition uh, is meant to detonate maybe 100 feet, a couple 100 feet up above ground, or maybe right upon impact. And then it basically is like a whole bunch of hand grenades that it blows out, covers a wide area. All those grenades go off. They are, what it does is it's an anti-personnel device. So it's not meant to blow up buildings. It's not meant to blow up tunnels or bunkers or anything like that. It is meant to be used against troops in the open. So let's say there's a large concentration of troops in Ukraine. They're having a formation. There's a couple hundred guys standing out in the open. You drop one of these on there. It's like dropping, 100 hand grenades in their midst, and it'll really tear up a lot of flesh. The problem is the Houthis are firing these against is the Israeli populace. Now, fortunately for the Israelis, the Houthis are so bad at what they do because they're just a bunch of camel herders that the the missile broke up before it actually got into. It looked like some various reporting whether or not it got into Israeli airspace, but it did not strike anything of value. And there's some reports that there were interception efforts that were successful, and some reports that the missile just blew up on its own before it was intercepted. And so it fell to earth and didn't hurt anybody, but certainly could have caused a lot of damage if it had landed. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu was in the sort of war room at Kiryat in Tel Aviv, where they direct all of these strikes with the leadership of the IDF and the defense minister and different people. And he gave a statement from there that I want to play for you. Now, I've translated this from Hebrew into English so you can understand it. But take a listen to what he had to say, because this is, he explains it very well.
The Air Force attacked strategic targets in Yemen again today, targeting the presidential palace in the heart of the capital Sanaa, the city's power station, and the fuel tanks that supply it. The Houthi terror regime is learning the hard way that it will pay, and is paying a very heavy price for its aggression against the state of Israel. I want to commend the Chief of Staff, the Air Force Commander, and our pilots for a perfect execution. All our planes have returned to our territory. Whoever attacks us, we attack them. Whoever plans to attack us, we attack them. I think the entire region is learning the strength and determination of the State of Israel.
The Israel Defense Forces have now destroyed the Houthi presidential palace in Yemen and attacked fuel depots and power stations. We continue to impose an aerial and naval blockade, targeting infrastructure used to promote Houthi terrorism. For every missile they launch towards Israel, the Houthis will pay with compound interest. Today we brought the Houthis a blow of darkness and gloom. Next will be a blow to the firstborns.
Compound interest. Well, that reminds me that we've got a great sponsor today, Preserve Gold. When it comes to giving gifts for the holidays or for graduations or something like that, most gifts that you give to your kids, your grandkids, whatever, they don't last. The toy breaks before the batteries die. The gadgets are outdated by next Christmas. The clothes are out of style faster than your teenager's hairstyle. But there's one gift that never goes out of fashion, and that's gold. Now, when you give gold, you're not just tossing somebody another piece of clutter. You're handing them a head start, a legacy. It's real value that doesn't depend on Washington keeping its act together. And here's the kicker. You don't have to buy a 20-pound brick of gold like some kind of narco trafficker. Gold comes in all sizes, and preserve gold offers coins as small as 1/10 of an ounce. They're sharp, they're collectible, and they're the perfect way to get your kids or grandkids thinking about building wealth instead of just blowing money. So 10 or 20 years from now, that gold coin you gave as a graduation gift or a Christmas present will still be worth something. And it's likely that your kid won't have spent it because, you give them $20 in their birthday card or $100 or whatever, and that's going to get blown on lattes or whatever. But this gold will last a lot longer than a gift card. And that's why I recommend Preserve Gold. They make it really simple to buy and ship physical gold and silver discreetly, securely, whether you want to set up a gold IRA or just grab a few coins to slip into the next birthday card. They've got you covered. Now, bottom line, empires and countries fall, currencies collapse, fads certainly fade away, but gold does not. So don't just give a gift, give a legacy. Text Chuck to 50505. As a matter of fact, I've got that over here. Text Chuck to 50505, and they will send you a free wealth protection guide. And you can also go to preservegold.com/hotzone to see what kind of products they have for offer. This is a 1 troy ounce gold coin that I have on the screen here. But as I said, they also have much smaller ones that are worth maybe a couple $100. And it would be a great start to your kid's future or your grandkid or whatever. So highly recommend that. So again, text Chuck to 50505 or go to preservegold.com/hotzone and get started today. Okay, so this strike on the Houthis in Yemen is, the Houthis struck first, fired a cluster munition at Israel, and Israel has made it clear, if you mess with us, you're going to pay with compound interest. I love how poetic. I think that was that the defense minister there. It was how he's saying, we paid them back with gloom and sadness and stuff like that. But this one actually hurt the Houthis. I've been quite a bit more critical of previous strikes on the Houthis because when the United States was doing it, we were striking empty warehouses, and I mean, seriously, if the United States was serious about stopping the Houthis from their malevolent attacks, not just on the Israelis but on global shipping, why didn't we flatten that palace? Why didn't we flatten those power stations? And we hit the port gets easily fixed. They have a lot of coastline, so they have been, taking ships ashore just at places where there's not actually a port. Just, it's a little harder, a little more inconvenient for the Houthis, but they're still able to get fuel and weapons and stuff ashore. So just bombing their ports is not going to make much of a difference. It's almost impossible to bomb the actual launchers because they're mobile launchers. So they drive them out in the desert, set them up, fire them off, and drive them away. So unless we happen to see them in the act of driving their launcher with the missile on it out into the desert, there's not really much we can do to take out that launcher. We have been able to take out a few, but this is something that takes a lot of planning and coordination. So the Israelis are starting to go a lot harder against the Houthis, and it's making the Houthis feel it now. How do we know? Because the Houthis are livid. The statements that they're putting out have been that this is interesting, that we believe that these last attacks on us were so effective because the United States was involved. And so if we determine that the United States was actually involved, we will be striking U.S. targets. So now the Houthis are threatening the United States. To which I would say, bring it. If I was President Trump, I'd be like, bring it on, man. Now, it's very sad for the people of Yemen that they've had to deal with this for so long. You have these ideologically motivated rebels who have taken over the capital city. When they did so, they captured a tremendous amount of weaponry, and they captured whole military bases and essentially uh, picked up most of the Yemeni army, which was not super friendly to Israel to begin with, but the Houthis take it to a whole nother level. And they, when I say they captured the army, they just captured the generals and told the generals, like, you're going to fight for us or we're going to kill your family. And so what do you think they're going to do? The people of Yemen have been in the midst of a famine for many years, and there's been so much reporting. I mean, just wall to wall coverage in the mainstream media about the quote unquote famine that's taking place in Gaza, which there's no proof of. In order to try to manufacture proof, we've seen them taking photographs of kids that are sick with various wasting diseases and claiming that that they are actually starving to death when they're not, uh, which is, just really cynical. I mean, that is so. Uh, I would say any news organization that has reported on this famine in that way by using those fake images. Some of them are AI generated, whatever, or by quoting the Hamas run Gaza Health Ministry by the number of deaths, that sort of thing. Uh, if there was a famine based on the measures that the UN used up until 15 minutes ago, there would have to be 400 or 500 people a day dying of starvation in Gaza. And we don't have that. We have reports of about 200 people total dying of hunger, but no proof of that. Like literally no proof. The UN cut their threshold of when they're measuring to determine whether there is a famine. What they do is they measure like the upper arm circumference, and there's a age uh, adjusted scale. And so if your arm gets too skinny, then that shows that you're malnourished. And the typical measurement was 30% malnourished in order to qualify as a famine. But they cut that in half. And they said, well, if anybody's 15% malnourished, then we're going to call that a famine in Gaza. They're not measuring it that way in other places like Sudan and Ethiopia and Yemen. They're only measuring it that way in Gaza. And so they had to fudge the numbers in order to call it a famine in Gaza. Meanwhile, there are a tremendous number of people that, I'm sorry, tremendous amount of aid coming into Gaza that's being just thrown away now. As a matter of fact, I just got this video. Didn't have a chance to put it in here. Let's see if I can make this work. Okay, so make that a little smaller so you can see it. This is aid in Gaza, and you see they're just leaving stuff behind. They're taking what they want out of these boxes and leaving other stuff. So there's canned goods, there's bags of flour, stuff like that. Let's see if I can play that one again so you can see it. Look at that, boxes full of the various canned goods and stuff. But they, well, I don't like peas, so I'm not going to take peas. This is not what they do. I mean, look at that. They're wading through the aid. I mean, that's insane. There's so much aid in Gaza that they're literally, they can't, there's no place to stand. They got to walk through the aid that's left behind by people. So dumping stuff on the ground. And yet the UN is still saying there's a famine in Gaza. Meanwhile, and again, by their own numbers, the Gaza Health Ministry says like 243 people have died of hunger, which they can't provide any proof of. But even if they could, let's take them at their word. Okay, so 243 people died since March of hunger. Well, in Yemen, where there's an actual famine, they have had 377,000 people die of hunger, according to the most recent estimates. Now, that's over a period of years, almost a decade, but nevertheless, we're talking about 85,000 children have starved to death in Yemen. Why? Well, partially because they live in a giant dirt parking lot, so it's kind of hard to grow stuff, but mostly because the Houthis are doing exactly what Hamas is doing in Gaza. That's taking all their resources and putting them into trying to destroy Israel and disrupt global shipping rather than trying to take care of their people. So if you live in a place like that, my heart goes out to those people. I feel so sorry for the people of Yemen, these people that God loves as much as he loves you and me. But it's not Israel's fault. It's the Houthis' fault. And it's going to continue to be the Houthis' fault that the Yemenis now have no electricity, that they're going to have a hard time getting clean water, that food is going to become more and more scarce, because all you have to do is stop attacking Israel and start putting your time and energy into improving the country where you live, and things will get better. But if you can't bring yourself to do that because of the depths of the hatred that you have in your heart for Jews, then you can't have nice things. It's just the way it goes. And it's the same, it goes the same for the people in Gaza. So the the presidential palace in Sanaa was not just off sitting off by itself. Uh, it was actually located within a military base, from which the military forces of the Houthi terrorists were operating. And so Israel bombed it. Now, I personally am against destroying works of art. That palace, I think you could say, was in many ways a work of art. I mean, look at that; it's gorgeous. That's probably one of the only nice things that the Houthis have, or that the Yemenis ever had created. But if it's being used for military purposes, it becomes a legitimate military target. And so the Israelis blew it up. They will continue. Again, this just begs the question for me that there have been so many strikes on the Houthis going all the way back to the Saudis in the early 2000s, which had performed daily airstrikes against the Houthis. The Houthis have had airstrikes almost every day for the last 10 years or more. Why didn't that palace get destroyed before if it's being used, if it's on a military base and it's being used for military purposes? Uh, I mean, like I say, if there's an ancient site, a mosque, a church, statues, something like that, that is a thing of beauty, it's a work of art, it's a memorial or a monument or something like that, especially things that are ancient. Man, it just hurts my heart to see them getting blown up. I mean, the Houthis could probably double their tax revenue by just charging people to come in and see that presidential palace, but you know, not anymore. It's not there, and it's just really sad to see that sort of thing take place. I really hate it when they are forced to destroy the work of other men's hands. And war is a tremendously, profanely destructive and costly endeavor. But safety first, right? I mean, the Israelis have got to be concerned with the safety of their people. The strike on the power plants damaged the electrical supply, which some of which was being used for military purposes. Uh, it it gives us proof about how the excuse me, the Houthi regime uses civilian infrastructure for military purposes. So they have no problem, just like Hamas, of operating from within civilian areas, using civilians as human shields, And when you do that, uh, it tremendously complicates the options that the Israelis would have to retaliate, but that's by design. The Houthis want it to be that way and have no problem putting people at risk to do so. Not to mention the people around the sites that they're using for military purposes. But the people that are being put at risk are basically everybody in Sanaa who now is going without power. I mean, there are people in Yemen who have medical needs that need electricity, need refrigeration, stuff like that, in order to survive. People on dialysis, people that are diabetic that need insulin that has to be refrigerated. And those things now are not going to be possible. So those people are going to die. And it's not Israel's fault, it's the Houthis' fault. You just have to maintain a clear focus on who is actually at fault here. Now, what could the Houthis uh, do? Well, first of all, let me just run down everything that was attacked in Yemen. So far, the targets we know of: the presidential palace, which didn't have people in it. They warned them, so they got all the people out. The Houthis power plant, the Asatin power plant, another military compound called the Anahadin military compound, fuel storage depot, a missile depot, and again, more than 50 targets were attacked in this latest round. Uh, so, what could the Houthis do? Well, they could go after more shipping. They're already they've essentially shut down the that area there, the Bab al-Mandab Strait, which leads into the Red Sea. So that is costing Israel money because their port in Eilat is bankrupt and closed down now. And it is also, costing everybody money because of the additional cost involved of taking a ship around the Cape of Good Hope instead of going through there and going through the Suez Canal. It's costing Egypt a tremendous amount of money. And Egypt is really getting fed up with this. They're actually beefing up their military forces along the southern border of Gaza because they're just petrified, very afraid that Israel is going to open the Rafah crossings and allow the Palestinians in Gaza to cross into Egypt in order to go somewhere else. And Egypt is dead set. That is not going to happen. They are not going to allow that. All these Palestinians to come into their country, and you kind of have to ask why. Like, why would that be exactly? Okay. Now, in addition to the strikes on Sanaa over the weekend, there were terrorist acts that took place inside Israel, specifically some more forest fires that were set. It's still very hot and dry. And so, right outside of Jerusalem, a place that I drive by all the time, there were some forest fires. And this is some footage of the firefighting efforts. Look at that plane go over there, trying to put out these fires. They had to, I think, close down the Highway 1 that goes into Jerusalem. I think this video is taken from that highway as they're trying to put out those fires. It's very, very high likelihood that those fires are the work of arsonists and likely Palestinians from areas in Judea and Samaria who have been making a habit of starting fires in Israel for the last, I don't know, more than a year. Okay. So your questions, I see questions here from Lord Peanut. He says, I still don't understand why Yemen is attacking Israel. They're nowhere near each other. That's right. They're more than 1,000 kilometers apart. They have nothing in common. It's like Finland attacking Ireland tomorrow. Except for the fact that the Houthis baked it into their government and their culture, a hatred of Israel. Their flag literally is a placard that has writing on it that says, death to America, death to Israel, you know, God is great, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, if death to Israel is literally on your flag, I think it's a little easier to understand why they would be attacking Israel. Now, they claim that they're doing this in solidarity for the people of Gaza. And so the question is not so much why they're doing it, but what will it take to stop them? I don't think it's going to be possible to bomb them into submission. They just don't care. Like I said, they've been enduring bombings from Saudi Arabia, from the UAE, from the United States, from Israel for over a decade, and they're still going. They don't care. It's hard to hurt somebody who has so little and they are inured to hardship. They're used to being without power. They're used to death and destruction all around them, and they're just not swayed by that. As a matter of fact, they wear it as a badge of honor that they are fighting the good fight of faith for them. And this it's such a demonic thing when you see the scale of human suffering that's caused by the Houthis, the scale of human suffering that's caused by Hamas and the attacks on October 7th, not just in Israel, but the ripple effect of that suffering in the entire region. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, just all these countries that are suffering, Egypt. There's just such a depth of human suffering in that area, and it's just heartbreaking. And all of it is due to the fact that these countries like Yemen, or at least the Houthi government that's running most of Yemen, and organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranians, their entire worldview is based on who they hate. And that's hard for Americans to understand. That's why it's hard for Westerners to understand. That's why so many protesters have gone out and have said, you know, if Israel would just make a deal with them, then this could all end. If Israel would just stop bombing them, this could all end. They don't understand that this won't end. If Israel stops and goes home tomorrow, the fighting is going to continue. The remnants of Hezbollah and Hamas are going to reconstitute, recruit a bunch of new fighters, build up their forces again, and they will attack Israel again. That, you know, this is an existential fight for Israel. There's just no two ways about it. And so you're not going to negotiate your way out of this, and you're not going to bomb your way out of this necessarily unless you decided that, you know, we're done with the Geneva Conventions, we're done with the rules of just war, and we're going to just carpet bomb them until there are no more. I'm not advocating for that, but that would be horrific, and it would. I mean, the bottom line is Israel would have to cause suffering on such a massive scale that nobody would be able to stomach it. There are very few people in the civilized world today who could stomach the depth and the scale of human suffering that would have to take place to get these people to stop. It's just not going to happen. So Israel's going to have to continue to do its best to degrade the capabilities of the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. And the best way to do that is to degrade the capabilities of the Iranians. And that is happening. That is happening. Israel, of course, had that 12-day war against Iran, but they are also striking every day, covertly, inside Iran up to the present day, right now. There are things that are, you know, going kablooey inside Iran, and what they're doing is the same thing that they're doing to Hezbollah, which I'll talk about in a minute. They are continuing to strike in that way, in a way that allows them to preserve some, you know, deniability, plausible deniability, but which keeps Iran on the back foot. It keeps them off balance. It keeps them kind of in reaction mode rather than action mode. So by doing so, they are degrading their enemy's capabilities, and they are continuing to step up the severity and intensity of the attacks on their enemies uh, to try to maintain that momentum. Okay, so Israel has some serious momentum inside Gaza now. They're calling up another 70,000 reservists. They're going to increase the number of people in Gaza. You know, they don't publish the number of troops that they have in Gaza. So a lot of it is just sort of guesswork to figure out how many IDF troops are actually in there. I was saying they could have as many as 100, 120,000 in there. It looks like, based on some more information that came out over the weekend, that they've got 60 to 70,000 troops in Gaza. But they're calling up another 70,000 troops and are going to send them into Gaza. So they will get to 100 plus thousand troops in Gaza in short order. And they're ahead of schedule so far from reports that I've seen as far as pushing into Gaza City. There are Merkava tanks rolling through the streets of Gaza City as we speak. They are having some success at striking at, you know, pinpoint targets. There was a strike on the hospital in Han Yunis yesterday or today that killed the reports are killed 15 people, and some of them were aid workers and journalists that were at the hospital. Israel, now I can't show you the video of those strikes. I'm going to put them up. I did put them up over on chuckholton.com because they're kind of graphic and they would get me kicked off of YouTube. But you can go over to chuckholton.com and you can see these strikes. Like Al Jazeera, there was a strike on the hospital. Al Jazeera set up cameras and was pointing their cameras at the hospital, reporting on the strikes that had just happened and on the recovery efforts of, the Palestinians going into the hospital to try to recover anybody that was wounded. There were some journalists that also went up on that balcony and were filming from that balcony on the hospital when Israel struck again. And that strike was captured on camera by the Al Jazeera cameras. And these guys are up there. You can see they're trying to recover some people or whatever, and they've got their little road guard vests on and stuff. And then they just disappear in a cloud of smoke and dust. So one of the journalists that was killed was a guy who was a stringer for the AP, but Israel says, yes, and we have proof that that journalist was also assisting with Hamas's efforts to attack Israel. What they mean is these journalists were reporting the positions of Israeli troops in real time on live television. And if you do that, what you're doing is you're telling the enemy, hey, here's where the enemy troops are. And we've got a camera on them so you can see what their disposition is and go attack them. And that directly puts Israeli troops at risk. And if you do that as a journalist, then there's a good chance you're going to get arrested, deported, kicked out of the country, or shot. And in this case, they got shot. And, my response to that is, it is terrible to see so many journalists being killed in Gaza. However, because Hamas continues to wear body armor with press vests on, continues to masquerade as the press, continues to make use of the press in their aggression against the IDF. They are making anybody with a press vest a legitimate target. Maybe not a legitimate target, but an understandable target. Much more of a target than they would be if they preserved the press as sacrosanct, left them alone, and didn't do that. So I myself am at greater risk wherever I go now because of the shenanigans that are being done by Hamas in Gaza, running around wearing press vests. And I don't just fault Hamas for that. I also fault the AP and Reuters and guys like that, because they are knowingly employing guys who are connected to Hamas inside Gaza as quote unquote journalists. And so what they're doing is they're lending a sheen of respectability and credibility to these terrorists by allowing guys who are connected to Hamas to come and work for them as stringers. Now I get it. They want to get footage that's of what's going on in Gaza. And the only way to do that, I mean, they can't send a guy like me into Gaza very easily because I'll get killed by Hamas. So if you're going to get footage out of Gaza, it's going to be with the permission of Hamas at this point. And so they're going to have to hire these people if they want to get that footage out. But in so doing, they are putting those guys' lives at risk. They're putting my life at risk, and they're diminishing the credibility of journalists around the world because this is becoming all too common, and that needs to be called out. It needs to stop for sure. I was looking at getting a subscription with the Associated Press so that I could use some of their videos, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to give money to an organization that's putting my life on the line by who they're hiring inside Gaza. And I'm going to let them know that. So, moving on up to Lebanon, there's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of rhetoric that's been spent over the last several weeks between the Lebanese government and Hezbollah about Hezbollah giving up their weapons, turning in their weapons, becoming a political party only and not a military wing. And Hezbollah says, not going to happen. We're not going to do that. We're not going to give up our weapons. The Lebanese government, the prime minister's office, has put out, statements saying Hezbollah must give up their weapons and turn them over to the Lebanese army, or there will be fighting. Israel is like, yes, there will be fighting, and we will be dropping bombs on Hezbollah people if they're not going to turn over their weapons. And of course, they've continued to assassinate Hezbollah leadership, to strike at Hezbollah weapons depots whenever they can find them, and anything else of military import inside Lebanon. Since the ceasefire that was brokered between the Biden administration and the Lebanese army. Hezbollah wasn't a part of that ceasefire, but they've adhered to it because they kind of have to. They really just don't have, like I said, they're still reeling, and Israel is keeping them reeling by continuing to strike inside Lebanon. And so the strikes you saw in Sanaa yesterday were very similar to the strikes that we saw in the Bekaa Valley, in the suburbs of Beirut, and in Sidon and the southern part of Lebanon over the past day. Now, Israel has been working with the Lebanese government to try to force Hezbollah to disarm. And they put out a statement from the prime minister's office in Israel. And I'm going to read you part of this here. Israel appreciates the significant step taken by the Lebanese government led by President Aoun and Prime Minister Salam. President Aoun is a Maronite Christian. Prime Minister Salam is a Muslim. And they're Sunni Muslim. Of course, Hezbollah is Shia. The recent decision of the Lebanese cabinet to act toward disarming Hezbollah by the end of 2025 was a significant decision. This decision marks an opportunity for Lebanon to regain its sovereignty, rebuild state institutions, the army, and the government without the involvement and influence of non-state actors. They're talking about Iran right there. In light of this important development, Israel is ready to support Lebanon in its efforts to disarm Hezbollah and to work together towards a safer and more stable future for both countries. If the Lebanese security forces take steps to disarm Hezbollah, Israel will take reciprocal measures, including a gradual reduction of IDF presence in coordination with the United States. Now is the time for Israel and Lebanon to move forward in a spirit of cooperation, focusing on the shared goal of disarming Hezbollah and promoting stability and prosperity for both countries. So that's the statement that was put out by Prime Minister Netanyahu's office today. What they're saying is they're willing to, back off and stop striking so much in Lebanon, move their troops away from the border if the Lebanese army will pick up the slack. If they don't, then Israel's going to continue to help the Lebanese army by striking at Hezbollah targets across Lebanon. Obviously, that doesn't make it doesn't make Lebanon, the Lebanese government, happy when Israel is striking at Hezbollah because it's invading Lebanon's sovereignty. But it's if Lebanon can't or won't do it, then Israel will. There was another fire at the port in Beirut over the weekend. If you recall, that's where back a few years ago there was a fire that culminated in one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history, as a whole warehouse full of ammonium nitrate went up, was ostensibly to be used for fertilizer, but was being stored improperly. Probably was actually belonged to Hezbollah and was going to be used for, missiles and rockets and things like that. And that flattened like dozens of city blocks all around the port in Beirut. I've been to that port, and man, that explosion was insane. You saw the videos coming out of that. It was incredible. So they didn't have another big explosion like that, but there was another fire at the port, sort of unexplained, not really sure what caused it, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Mossad had something to do with that. Now, turning over to Syria real quick, the Israelis conducted several raids inside Syria, and I've got some footage of that here over the weekend, taking out arms depots that had belonged to the Assad regime, or were maybe they might have been ISIS or Hezbollah or something like that. Whoops, that's the forest fires. So Israel is continuing its maximum pressure campaign in Gaza, in Yemen, in Lebanon, and in Syria, and they have no plans to back off anytime soon. As a matter of fact, the IDF gave a report to the Knesset over the weekend talking about that if they are forced to do to Gaza City what they have done to much of the rest of Gaza, which is destroy anything that has military use, any building that has booby traps, any building that has a tunnel entrance, any building that is being used for storage of weapons or is being used as a fighting position by Hamas. If they have to destroy all of those buildings in Gaza City, it could take them up to a year. That's what they're saying. They're saying it's just going to take a long time. We're talking about a lot of buildings, a lot of destruction. Let's hope that they don't have to go that far. Let's hope that Hamas will come to its senses sometime very soon. Okay, I want to get over to your questions here before we get too late. And thank you for, if you have questions, just put them in the chat. And then our moderators will move them over to this document that we have where I can see them all in one place, so I don't miss any. Because I like your questions. I want to get to your questions, and I hate to try to scroll through thousands of comments to try to find them. So this is a little better option. Tim Labs asks, are the Houthis weaker since the strike against Iran? Marginally, yes, but they are still getting shipments of weapons from Iran, we believe. There have been several shipments of weapons in the last month that have been captured by the Israelis or the United States at sea, where they're shipping them in on boats. And so they've taken those off the playing field. So I think you can safely say that the Houthis are definitely weaker since the war against Iran, the 12-day war. Truckee 117 says, does anyone even stay at that palace? I saw a picture of the inside and it was crappy. Apparently it was empty. So no. And apparently, I would guess it was empty because the Houthis kind of know that that thing is going to get whacked at some point, right? So Debbie asks, maybe the aid and food should be sent to Yemen instead of Gaza. Yeah, I was going to point out that even though there are many multiples of people in Yemen than there are in Gaza. So 2.5 million people in Gaza. There's more than 7 million people in Yemen who are at risk of famine. And they just in Sanaa alone, there's more than 3 million. And they get less than half as much aid as Gaza gets by my calculations. So the Gazans are getting absolutely lavished with aid compared to other places that need it quite a bit more. Beth Sillers Anderson says, "Is it true that the hostage digging his own grave died?" I've not seen that. I've seen that he's in grave condition. Well, I didn't mean that. He's in terrible condition, and they believe that 2 of the 20 living hostages are in critical condition and could die at any time. Likely that, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just likely that they're not going to get those guys back alive. Benji says, right now, my friend in Sanaa, Yemen, said that the power is on for military services and remains off for civilians. They have to charge their phones in military companies' buildings. Well, I would sooner go without a phone than go to a military building to charge my phone because that building is likely to get flattened at any moment. And that's great intel. Thank you for that. As a matter of fact, Benji, if you don't mind passing along the contact information for your friend in Sanaa, I would love to contact him and maybe even try to interview him. But if what your friend is saying, that the power is on for military buildings and is off for everybody else, then as soon as it gets dark tonight, all Israel has to do is fly overhead and use, night vision to see which buildings have electricity and then flatten those buildings. So thank you for that little tidbit of intel. Appreciate that. John Collier says, my vape store guy is from Yemen. And he said, your vape store guy. You have a vape store guy. That's awesome. Like, you know, I don't have a vape store guy. That's great. Anyway, he's from Yemen, and he said that they chase civilians into water basins and make them set up camp till they get swept away. That's horrific. Wonder why they would do that. Scott Smith says, I think that Israel should take all the food out of Gaza, move it to the desert, and let all the people that want food leave Gaza, go to the desert, and never let them go back. That would be great, except you've got to, you would have to get Egypt to agree to that, and Egypt is not going to agree to that. There would be full-on war between Egypt and Israel if Israel tried to do that. I mean, it's a good theory, and honestly, there's a lot of open space in the Negev, so they could put up a bunch of tents in the Negev and say, okay, we're going to let you into Israel proper, into this holding facility in the Negev where there's a ton of food, and we'll move you all out there, and you can live in the scorching heat of the desert, which is not much different from Gaza. It's essentially the same, except they're not as close to the ocean. And you live in the scorching heat of the desert to the east of Gaza for the next year or two. Well, we bulldoze everything in Gaza and start over, and then we'll let you slowly back into Gaza. But Israel's not going to do that either. So nice idea. Okay, so I already answered Lord Peanut the second's question about why Yemen attacks Israel. Jessica Noreen says, is Hamas still around? Oh, yes, they are. I've seen video today of Hamas breaking the legs of Palestinians that they caught taking aid from GHF. GHF is passing out millions of meals a day, and they have to hide the identities of the people that come in there. But if Hamas thinks, they don't have to have any proof, they just decide that they think that you took aid from GHF, they will drag you into a back alley and take a big lead pipe and break your legs. And they video that and they put that out on social media. I obviously don't show it here because it would get me banned from YouTube, and it's horrific. Uh, but and it's very graphic. But you don't need to see it to understand what's happening. But it's very, very bad. Hamas is torturing its own people in many ways. Kemal Oz, thank you for that, says, why hasn't Trump banned Greta from America yet? That's a really good question. It'd be great if he did. That'd be fantastic. Aaron Howell says, hard for, you know what else Trump could do, actually, as I think about it, is he could say that any country that doesn't ban Greta is going to have another 10% tariff added to their products. That seems to be the way that Trump is, kind of operating these days. And more power to him. That's great. Aaron Howell says, hard for those without experience to process how the militants in the region recruit many of their ground fighters, similar to the aggression of the Actors and Writers USA guilds after infiltration. Interesting comparison, Aaron. I would have never made that connection myself, but in many ways, you're right. What they do is they find people that they can exercise power over, which in the case of Hamas is anybody in Gaza. In the case of the Actors Writers Guild, is anybody that wants to act or write in Hollywood. And then force them to do things that they wouldn't normally do voluntarily by holding their livelihood, their future, or in some cases, their physical security over their heads. Yeah. Foster says Yasser Arafat himself said in his biography that the Palestinians have no national identity. I, Yasser Arafat, man of destiny, will give them an identity through conflict with Israel. And that is exactly what he's done. He's been very successful at that, even after his death. The only thing that really solidifies the Palestinian identity is hatred of Israel. Otherwise, they're just another group of Arabs, and as they should be. I mean, they should just be treated as another group of Arabs. Sequest BCD says, how's it that these journalists can get in? Because they're already in, they are Palestinians from Gaza. And so they're not getting into Gaza. What they're doing is they're being hired by news agencies outside of Gaza to film things in Gaza and send that film out so that the AP can use it as propaganda against Israel and Reuters and CNN and BBC and everybody else. So these are homegrown journalists, right? And, that brings up that question that comes up so often from my viewers, which is, how do Gazans make money so that they can buy things? And there was a good post on that that was put up on Abu Ali Express today that shows 5 ways which money is transferred from abroad to residents in the Gaza Strip during the war, because that's a very common question. One of the sources of cash flow that enables this is the entry of funds from abroad into the Strip, and it's particularly a common phenomenon. They're money transfers from family members that live abroad. There are a lot of Palestinians that live in Europe, the United States, and elsewhere, Jordan, you name it. Tons of Palestinians living in Jordan. And those guys transfer money electronically into family members who live in Gaza. So the way that they do that is by using a Western Union money transfer service to a Palestinian bank, because there are Palestinian banks still operating, and many Gazans have bank accounts there, and so they can get wire transfers in from places like Western Union. Number 2, a transfer from a European bank account to an account at the Bank of Palestine, and from there to the Palestinian financial app that allows direct purchases in the marketplaces with a fee. So it's like PayPal for Palestinians. It's Palestinian Pal, I guess you'd call it. And they don't have to actually get cash. They can just use their phones and buy things with their phones using these apps. Gazans that have accounts at Bank of Palestine sometimes have PayPal linked accounts that can receive money from abroad without any problem. There's another method that's been used all across the globe since before banks even really existed. It's called hawala. This is a Muslim method of transferring money. So let me explain it as best I can. Let's say that, okay, I live in the United States and my son lives in Armenia. And somebody in the US wants to send money to my son, but there's no easy way to transfer money to my son in Armenia. So instead, my son says, hey, send money to my dad who's in the States, and then my dad will get me the money. Uh, no, wait, that's not a great. Let me back up. Let's say somebody in the United States wants to send money to somebody, not my son, in Armenia, but he doesn't have a good, easy way to do that. So he comes to me, he gives money to me. I call my son in Armenia and say, hey, this guy just gave me $100. I want you to give $100 of your money to this other person in Armenia. And then you and I, next time we see each other, we'll settle up. I'll give you, I'll give you the cash or whatever. Because, family is very tight knit in the Arab world and the Muslim world. That's a way that very often there's a business model there where using Hawala, you can go to a money changer, businessman in the place where you are, whether that's Lebanon or Europe or the United States or whatever. And you can say, I need to get money to this guy in Gaza. And this guy says, okay, I've got family in Gaza. So you give me the money. I'll direct my family to give that money out of their pocket to your friend in Gaza, minus a small fee. And we see that actually working here in Panama when the migrants were coming through the Darien Gap. A lot of times they would need money, but they wouldn't, there's no banks down in the Darien Gap. And so their Indians down there would have like family members in Panama City, and they would say, hey, here's a cell phone, call your family in Haiti, tell them to wire money to my family in Panama City. They will call me and tell me they got the money, and then I will give you the money here. And so it's a just kind of informal wire transfer method. Okay. And the fifth way that they get money is through cryptocurrencies. Um, it's a much more common method than people think. It's very popular in the strip. The USDT cryptocurrency is pegged to the dollar. So $1 of USDT is $1 of USDT, right? And it just stays right there. It's not real volatile like Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies. It's just pegged to the dollar. And the Binance crypto platform allows digital wallets, and Gazans can actually trade that stuff with just electronically between themselves. So if I want to buy some chickens from my neighbor in Gaza, I go to my neighbor in Gaza and say, you have a Binance account? Yeah, I do too. Okay, I'll transfer $20 of USDT from my account to your account, and you give me the chickens, and there you go. So they barter with cryptocurrency essentially, and that's the way it works. Okay. Now, David Collins says, are we looking at another October 7th from new terror tunnels? And then he asks about Egypt's increase of troops activity along the Gaza border. No, I don't think so. I mean, they're not digging new terror tunnels right now. I promise you that. And Egypt is not going to have anything to do with another October 7th. They're just trying to make sure that Israel doesn't allow Gazans to enter Egypt. Steve Reitler says, off topic, were the dogs and monkeys happy to see you? Very happy. Yes, very much. The monkeys, not so much, but the dogs, yes. Patty Chapman says, do you think Netanyahu is seriously considering a partial hostage swap? I think if he had the opportunity, like a serious opportunity to actually get any more living hostages out, he would take it. But Hamas is still saying they're not going to do that unless Israel stops fighting and leaves the Gaza Strip altogether, which is not going to happen. Derek Wilson says, you may have already answered this, but why won't Egypt let Palestinians pass through their land? Because the Palestinians have a long history of terror attacks against Egypt whenever they have managed to get into Egypt in the past. So the Egyptians don't want to deal with that. GB says, are the Kurdish still guarding ISIS prisoner camps in Syria, or did they stop after the U.S. pulled out? The Kurds are still guarding a few of those camps, but they are they're dwindling fast. And a lot of those ISIS families are just being set free, from my understanding, and are, that's a big problem. Okay. Are the hotels in Israel offering lower rates now? Yes and no. So I've got another call to get on, folks, so that we're going to have to stop it there. But thank you very much for watching the Hot Zone. I really appreciate all of you.